These glossy screens are like my worst enemy. You know, I use the good cameras, right, because I want the shots to look as clear and as nice as I can for viewers. But I'm telling you, these glossy screens, and I did this yesterday, it is just impossible, but we're gonna try.
It's easy to see how this might be confusing. There's the CX-90, that's the Mazda, and there's the XC90, that's the Volvo. And although search engine data suggests that because of their very similar names, these two are often being searched accidentally in place of one another, I thought we'd line the pair up side by side because actually they're more similar than you might think too. The CX-90 is the new Mazda 3-row debuting in the first year of its first generation on sale for model year 2024. In Mazda's lineup, the CX-90 is the largest and most expensive model they sell. Mazda is a Japanese car maker, and the CX-90 is built in Japan. The XC90 is Volvo's popular 3-row SUV that first hit the road back in 2003. And then after more than a decade, the second generation XC90 arrived for 2016 and remains on sale today, so in 2024, the XC90 is now 9 years into its second generation, benefiting from a long list of updates and enhancements along the way. Volvo is a Swedish automaker, and the XC90 is built in Ridgeville, South Carolina. So these are both 3-row SUVs, both standard with hybrid engines and available with plug-in hybrid engines, and they're both standard with all-wheel drive. Both actually pretty beautiful interiors too, and we'll get to those a little later. So pricing from $46,000 to about $64,000 for the Mazda CX-90, depending on the model you choose. I'll put full pricing up on your screen side by side for reference, and you'll notice the Volvo XC90 is quite a bit heftier with a base price of $71,500, and the more luxury-oriented Volvo's top line is higher, with pricing climbing to the better part of 6 digits if you go top of the line. So on average, a Volvo XC90 costs about 20,000 Canadian dollars more than a Mazda CX-90. But how much of that higher price translates into more space and capability and performance? Well, let's take a look. The Volvo XC90 measures 195 inches or 4,953 millimeters long. That's 6.6 inches or 167 millimeters shorter than the Mazda CX-90, which comes in at 201.6 inches or 5,120 millimeters. So that's a 3.4% advantage in overall length for the Mazda. The Volvo runs the shorter wheelbase of the pair too, measuring 117.5 inches or 2,984 millimeters. The CX-90's wheelbase of 122.8 inches or 3,120 millimeters gives it an advantage of nearly 5.3 inches or 135 millimeters. That's a difference of about 4.5%. On height, it's 69.9 inches or 1,775 millimeters for the XC90, and 68.2 inches or 1,732 millimeters for the CX90. This means the Volvo is taller by 1.7 inches or 43 millimeters, an advantage of about 2.5%. When it comes to ground clearance, look for 9.9 inches or 251 millimeters from the Volvo, and just 7.9 inches or 201 millimeters from the Mazda.
So from the driver's seat, expect the XC90 to feel smaller and lighter and more easygoing to use in tight quarters than its size leads on. And excellent graphics from this backup camera system, even in low light situations. Here's a closer look for you. Like, I can see individual rocks on the ground behind me in this gravel parking lot here. And we've got a couple of different modes and settings that we can change. So if I want the 360 camera, I just tap here. And now I've got that bird's eye view from top down that you're right in there. Like, these graphics are awesome. And by just tapping the vehicle here on the screen, we can call up these 4 other camera angles. So if I want to see the curb view on the driver's side, I just tap there, back to 360, push this camera to see in front, this camera to see behind. And if we need it, some additional controls down here on the bottom to turn your parking sensors on and off, and also your rear auto braking system on and off. So some great graphics on this system, some great performance even in low light. Really appreciate the very wide angle to that backup camera, and ultimately, this all just adds up to take the second guessing out of moving around in tight quarters.
Next, I crunched the numbers to see how the CX-90's larger overall size translated to the cargo dimensions and interior volumes between the pair. So on total interior volume, it's 103.8 cubic feet for the Volvo and 141.6 cubic feet for the Mazda. That's roughly 36% more than the Volvo, despite costing on average $20,000 less. Cargo space dimensions row by row on your screen, but long story short, the Volvo actually leads with 14% more cargo space behind the first row, 4.5% more cargo space behind the second row, and about 6% more behind the third row, meaning that while on paper the Mazda is physically larger, the Volvo has more cargo capacity in all rows.
Charging port here, that's nice.
They've set you up pretty good. I mean, the cargo space in this area is never really why you're buying a 3-row. But if we fold those down again just to show the difference here, the way those go, that's the weekends where the camping gear, some luggage. Look at the size of that, yeah.
But that's a ramp. When you go here, you're coming up. Everything is uphill.
Actually, even that rear floor segment is angled upwards, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button if you're just as surprised as I was, and now, let's see how things stack up when it comes to passenger space. Front seat passengers in the Volvo XC90 get 38.9 inches or 988 millimeters of front headroom. That gives the lead to the Mazda CX-90, with 39.7 inches or 1,008 millimeters of front seat headroom. That's 0.8 inches or 20 millimeters more than the Volvo XC90, leaving the Mazda CX-90 with a 2% advantage here, and all despite the Volvo being the taller machine of the pair. It's the same advantage in rear seat headroom for the Mazda, despite the Volvo being taller, and the surprises keep on coming. With front legroom of 40.9 inches or 1,039 millimeters in the Volvo, and 41.7 inches or 1,059 millimeters in the Mazda, there's that same 0.8 inch advantage for the Mazda one more time. Second row legroom sees the Mazda CX-90 a full 2.4 inches ahead of the Volvo XC90, for a hefty 7% advantage here, thanks again in part to the longer body and wheelbase of the pair. With third row legroom of 31.9 inches or 810 millimeters in the Volvo XC90, and 30.4 inches or 772 millimeters in the Mazda CX-90, the XC90 boasts a 1.5 inch or 38 millimeter advantage in third row legroom versus the CX-90, despite being much shorter in overall length. So thus far in this comparison, the tallest vehicle tends to have the least headroom, the longest vehicle tends to have lower cargo volumes, and despite being shorter, the Volvo's actually got the most third-row legroom, so when it comes to comparing the dimensions of these two vehicles, none of this really makes sense, nothing seems to add up, and now you know.
Yeah, so both doors open as wide as possible, and especially that back door. That's just about 90 degrees. So look at the size of the opening we have here. That's a big door opening right there.
12 and younger to sit back here. Like, I got a big bulkhead, like, right between, like, it's right here.
Right.
Like, if you took a good bump, I might whack myself. Let's see how this is getting out. So push that forward.
Is that all the way? That is all the way, huh?
Yeah, I can't. I'm fighting that.
That's maxed out there.
All right.
Notice the space around your feet. You got to go kind of 1 foot at a time.
I'm holding on to here. Well, there is a handle here, but I don't know if that would actually... That doesn't really work.
Under the hood in the Volvo, it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder with a 48-volt mild hybrid system and 247 horsepower. That's called the B5 engine. There's also the B6, a turbocharged version of that hybrid engine with 295 hybrid turbocharged horsepower. In the Mazda CX-90, it's a 3.3-liter straight-six turbo engine with 280 or 340 horsepower depending on the trim grade, and both of those are also 48-volt mild hybrids, by the way. Both the CX-90 and XC90 have a plug-in hybrid option. In the Mazda, it's a 323 horsepower hybrid 4-cylinder, non-turbo, and the Volvo steps it up with the T8 engine and its 455 horsepower. So the Volvo comes in as the most powerful model available in this matchup, but again, mind that step in pricing. In both cases, the plug-in hybrid model is the fastest in the lineup, even if the Mazda CX-90's straight-six turbo engine is more powerful. Towing capacity is up to 5,000 pounds for both models, but always check with your dealer, as there are differences by trim grade. The combined fuel economy rating for both straight-six engines in the Mazda CX-90 is 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers. If you pay $1.50 for a liter of gas, that means driving 100 kilometers will cost you $14.10 on average. By that same math, if you drive 25,000 kilometers a year, allow for a fuel cost of $3,525 per year, or $294 per month. The XC90 with the B6 engine is a little thirstier. It needs 9.8 liters of gas to drive 100 kilometers, and you need to run premium. Assuming that costs you $1.65 per liter, then it's an annual fuel cost of $4,060, about $44 a month more than the CX-90. In terms of the plug-in hybrid models, when they are using gas, the Volvo uses 8.9 liters of gas to drive 100 kilometers, while the less powerful Mazda is also thirstier, using 9.4 liters of gas to cover that same distance. And when it comes to these plug-in hybrid models, premium fuel is recommended for the Mazda and required for the Volvo. It's hard to calculate an annual fuel cost with the plug-in hybrid engine because both of these models can deliver several dozen kilometers of all-electric driving per charge, and a lot of owners spend a lot of time driving them gas-free, mostly reserving fuel use for longer trips or in colder weather. And if you want to learn more about how all of that works, be sure to get subscribed to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any new weekly uploads, and be sure to leave me a like if you learned something new. So which one would I buy? It's an oddly easy question for me to answer, and I do love that Volvo XC90. I've never had a bad time driving a good Volvo. Still, for my very own dollars, it's gotta be the Mazda CX-90 with more of what I like. I would miss the Volvo's magnificent seats and stereo, but for about $60,000 like my CX-90 tester, along with that sweet 4-cylinder engine with the big electric torque boost that also takes a big bite out of my gas bill. Of course, Volvo really helped pioneer the acceptance of plug-in hybrids in Canada and were among the first on the scene, with Mazda's CX-90 plug-in hybrid only just arriving this year for 2024. Still, dollar for dollar, this latest Mazda is one of the most athletic crossovers I've encountered at this price point.